Every man has a moment where he gives everything, chases endlessly, answers every message, adjusts his life, and sacrifices his pride, all in the name of love. He believes that by being available, kind, and endlessly understanding, he's showing how much he cares. But in return, he's slowly pushed away, overlooked, even disrespected. Why? That's what this video answers in full. This isn't another pep talk. This is the video that will force you to confront who you've become, and more importantly, who you were meant to be. The truths you'll hear in the next hour have rebuilt broken men, restored lost confidence, and transformed the way thousands of men show up in their relationships and in their own lives. If you're tired of chasing, if you're exhausted from giving and still feeling empty, if you've ever been told you're too nice, or felt like you're losing your power the more you love someone, this is the one video you can't afford to miss. And if this message connects with you, support the channel. Share this with another man who needs to hear it. By supporting us, you help make life-changing insights available to more men who are lost, hurting, and silently searching for strength. We're building something real here, not just videos, but a movement. Your support keeps this message alive. What if the reason she can't stop thinking about you isn't because of what you did for her, but because of what you stopped doing? What if the very act of not chasing her made you unforgettable? That's not a trick. That's not manipulation. That's psychology, and it changes everything. The myth of masculine softness. It usually starts with the best intentions. You meet someone. You feel something real. You want to show her how much she matters to you. So, you give. You give your time, your attention, your energy. You make her feel important. You make her a priority. You try to be the one who never lets her down. You compromise. You say yes, even when you're tired. You answer her texts instantly. You cancel plans to see her. You listen to her problems, support her dreams, encourage her ideas, even when you're carrying your own struggles in silence. At first, it feels right. It feels like connection, like love. But slowly, and almost silently, something starts to shift. The more you give, the more she starts to pull away. Her replies get slower, her tone changes. She seems distracted, less present. You start to feel it in your gut, but you ignore it. Instead, you give more. You try harder. You think, maybe I just need to show her more love. Maybe she's going through something. Maybe if I just hang in there, she'll come back to me. But she doesn't. And what you don't realize in that moment is that all your giving, all your effort, all your presence, it stopped coming from a place of strength. It started coming from fear, the fear of losing her, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being forgotten. And the more you tried to fix the distance with love, the more it became clear. You weren't loving from power. You were loving from survival, from need. And nothing kills attraction faster than that. You begin to lose your edge, the fire that made you magnetic, the calm confidence, the quiet strength, the sense of purpose. It fades. You start reacting to her energy instead of leading with your own. You stop doing the things that made you feel like a man. You stop holding your ground. You stop saying no. You stop living for yourself. And she feels it. She sees it. She may not be able to explain it, but emotionally, it shifts the entire dynamic. She doesn't pull away because you're not good enough. She pulls away because you disappeared into her. You became too predictable, too emotionally available without boundaries, too easy to access, too easy to sway. You were always there, always responding, always saying the right things. But slowly, she stopped feeling that spark, because there was no longer any tension, no challenge, no polarity. And without polarity, there's no pull. It's not that she stopped loving you, it's that she stopped seeing you, not physically, emotionally. You faded into the background of your own relationship. Not because you weren't trying, but because you were trying too hard to hold on to someone who started to feel they didn't need to reach for you anymore. And then it hits you. After all the effort, all the giving, all the late night talks, and "I've got you no matter what" promises, she walks away, or emotionally checks out, and you're left wondering what more you could have done. And the answer is painful. It's not about what more you should have given. It's about what you stopped giving to yourself. You stopped being the man she was drawn to, the one who had his own life, his own boundaries, his own gravity. The one who wasn't afraid to walk away from anything that disrespected his worth. You didn't lose her because you were too kind, too loving, or too generous. You lost her because she stopped feeling that emotional strength behind your love. She needed to feel your presence, not just your availability. She needed to feel your self-respect more than your approval. She needed to see that you could love her deeply, but still walk away if it came at the cost of losing yourself. That is what creates lasting attraction. That is what builds respect. Not just love, not just emotion, but boundaries, power, direction, mystery, and self-respect that never flinches, no matter how much you care. So, if you've ever been there, left confused, heartbroken, wondering how being all in turned into her being all out, you're not alone. Many men have lived this, but the ones who rise from it are the ones who finally understand. Your love only becomes valuable when it's backed by the strength to walk away if it's no longer being honored. Why she reacts to mystery, not access. There is something deeply powerful in the unknown, not just in relationships, but in life. We are drawn to what we don't fully understand, to what isn't obvious, predictable, or easily controlled. This is especially true in the emotional world between men and women. While men often seek comfort in consistency, women are emotionally attuned to something different. They respond to energy that feels earned, not handed over. They respond to value that demands presence and attention. This is why mystery, real, grounded mystery, becomes a force more powerful than charm, looks, or status. When a man is constantly available, always replying, always eager to please, he removes all curiosity from the connection. She knows what he'll say. She knows where he'll be. She knows how he'll react. And while that might sound like safety, in emotional language, it becomes boredom. Emotional safety is not about predictability. It's about presence. It's about knowing the man is grounded, not desperate. When she already has all your time, all your thoughts, and all your effort before she's even offered respect or affection, she stops feeling the need to reach for you. Because there's nothing to reach for. She already has you, fully, without the slightest resistance. This is where the emotional chemistry starts to fade. Not because you're not attractive, not because you're not interesting, but because there's no edge, no tension, no reason to stay emotionally alert. Women don't lose interest because they want games. They lose interest when there's no space to wonder, no gap between what they know and what they want to explore. And mystery creates that gap. Not the kind where you pretend to be someone else or play manipulative tricks. Real mystery is the result of having a life so full, so rich, so centered, that no relationship, no matter how exciting, can consume you entirely. When you stop offering every emotion immediately, when you no longer send long texts trying to explain yourself, when you stop reacting to every shift in her tone, you give her something she's rarely given: room to reflect, space to feel, silence to process. And that silence speaks louder than all the begging, explaining, and chasing in the world. Suddenly, she's not sure how you feel. She's not sure what you're thinking. She's not sure if she still has your attention. And that uncertainty, when it's grounded in calm, not bitterness, becomes magnetic. She begins to ask herself questions. Why isn't he calling as much? Why does he seem fine without me? Why isn't he chasing like before? She replays old conversations, wondering if she missed something. She starts looking at your social media. She notices small things, your mood, your confidence, your calmness, and they bother her in ways she can't explain. Because she doesn't just miss your attention. She misses the control she once had over your emotions. Mystery creates emotional movement. It activates her imagination. It forces her to step out of passive comfort and step into awareness. And in that awareness, she begins to reach. Not out of strategy, but out of instinct. She leans in, she texts more, she initiates. Because what once felt guaranteed now feels valuable. And value is what makes her invest. But here's what makes this powerful. You're not doing it to manipulate her. You're not withdrawing because you want to punish her. You're just living your life. You're no longer feeding the cycle of validation. You're building your world, and she's welcome in it. But she's not the center of it. And that subtle shift, from chasing to standing still, changes everything. You become the one she thinks about. Not because you're loud, but because you're no longer emotionally predictable. You become unforgettable, not for the effort you gave, but for the presence you reclaimed. And once a woman starts to feel that shift in you, she begins to experience something that's rare. She feels the emotional weight of your absence, not your silence, not your distance, but your emotional independence. And that is the energy that makes you impossible to forget. Neediness, the silent repulsion. Neediness isn't something that shows up loudly. It doesn't knock on the door with a sign. It creeps in quietly through small habits, subtle shifts, and unconscious choices. It often begins with good intentions. You care about her. You want to show her that you're invested. You want her to feel supported, appreciated, wanted. So you reply to her messages instantly, no matter what you're doing. You cancel your plans when she asks to meet last minute, even if it means letting people down. You say yes when you want to say no, because you're afraid of upsetting her or causing tension. You apologize quickly, sometimes for things you didn't even do, just to keep the peace. At first, it seems like love, devotion, generosity. But over time, this behavior reveals a deeper truth. You're not offering her love freely, you're offering it conditionally. You're hoping that by giving more, she'll feel something stronger, that by proving how dependable, present, and willing you are, she'll see you as irreplaceable. But women don't respond to need the way you hope they do. Because emotional neediness, even when disguised as romantic effort, is not attractive. It's unsettling. It signals one thing: that you are not whole without her, that her attention is the only thing holding your confidence together. She might not say anything right away, she might even appreciate it at first, but the energy underneath your actions speaks louder than your words. Every time you reach out too quickly, every time you check your phone hoping she replied, every time you say, "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," when she pulled back, you are silently telling her, "I need you more than I respect myself." That message may not be spoken, but it is felt. And once she feels it, something inside her begins to shift. It's not that she wants you to stop caring. It's not that she wants a man who ignores her or treats her coldly. But she does want a man who values himself enough not to beg. A man who can stand in his own energy, with or without her approval. When your desire to keep her happy comes at the cost of your own self-respect, the balance in the relationship collapses. She stops seeing you as a partner and starts seeing you as a follower. And here's what happens next. The attraction doesn't just fade, it reverses. She starts to feel suffocated by your attention. She sees your constant checking in not as love, but as control. She interprets your need to always be available, not as romantic, but as insecure. Things you do to feel closer are the exact things pushing her away. You're not loving her, you're clinging. You're not supporting her, you're holding on out of fear. Attraction is built on polarity. It thrives when both people stand in their power and choose each other from a place of strength. When one person becomes emotionally dependent, the polarity breaks. Desire needs space to breathe. It needs the freedom to come and go, to wonder, to miss, to remember. But neediness takes all of that away. It fills every space. It suffocates the emotional mystery. It replaces power with pressure. Women are deeply intuitive. Even if they can't explain it, they feel when a man has placed his entire emotional life in their hands. And it doesn't feel good. It creates responsibility where there should be connection. It makes her feel like she has to manage you, reassure you, hold you together, instead of simply enjoy your presence. You think you're showing her how much she means to you, but what she sees is a man who can't stand still when she steps away. A man who fears her absence more than he values his own presence. And no matter how much she once loved you, respected you, or was drawn to you, that fear begins to dim her attraction. She stops looking forward to your calls. She stops smiling when your name shows up. Because instead of feeling excited, she feels pressure. The pressure of being your only source of emotional safety. The truth is, she can't love a man who doesn't love himself. She can't surrender to a man who always surrenders first. She can't respect a man who collapses every time she gets quiet. So the very behaviors you use to pull her closer are the same ones that make her leave. Not with anger, not with hate, but with the quiet withdrawal that says, This doesn't feel right anymore. Neediness is not about asking for love. It's about asking someone else to complete the love you haven't given yourself. And until you stop doing that, until you stop giving from a place of fear, you'll keep reliving the same heartbreak. She'll keep pulling away. You'll keep chasing. And every time, you'll feel more hollow, more confused, and more lost. But here's the good news. The moment you realize that your value doesn't come from how much you give, but from how deeply you stand in your truth, everything begins to change. The need to be chosen disappears, and what replaces it is a quiet, calm confidence. One that says, I choose me, fully, and if she chooses me too, that's beautiful. If she doesn't, I am still whole. What indifference really looks like. Indifference is one of the most misunderstood forces in relationships. To many, it sounds cold, detached, even cruel. But true indifference, the kind that comes from self-respect and internal strength, is none of those things. It's not about ignoring someone. It's not about punishing them with silence. It's not about withholding love to manipulate emotions. Real indifference isn't an act of defense. It's an act of power. It's what happens when a man decides that no external reaction, no sudden silence, no emotional outburst can shake his peace. Real indifference doesn't come from bitterness or revenge. It comes from clarity. It's the moment a man stops placing his emotional stability in someone else's hands. It's the quiet realization that her attention is not his oxygen, that her affection, her approval, her texts, while welcome, are not the foundation of his worth. And when a man finally reaches this place, something in his energy shifts. He doesn't become cold. He becomes calm. He doesn't start avoiding. He starts observing. He doesn't stop loving. He just stops collapsing. You no longer sit by the phone, waiting for her reply. You don't craft perfect texts or rehearse conversations in your mind to win her over. You don't chase closure, explanations, or signs of interest. You don't shape your personality to match her moods. Instead, you remain exactly where you are, grounded, still, focused. Your day doesn't fall apart because she pulled away. Your emotions don't spiral because she's distant. You no longer live on the edge of her attention, hoping for crumbs of reassurance, because now you carry your reassurance within yourself. When a woman encounters this energy, it disorients her. Not because you've changed into someone cold, but because she's used to a version of you that was constantly adjusting, reacting, and chasing. She remembers the man who jumped to reply, the man who lit up at every call, the man who made her the center of his world. And now that man is still composed, present, but not pleading. That shift is powerful, because it breaks the emotional loop that kept her in control. This kind of indifference is rare, and because it's rare, it creates impact. She may test it, she may get louder, she may pull back further, she may try to provoke a reaction, just to confirm that she still has power over you. But if your indifference is real, not theatrical, not performative, her efforts won't land. They won't move you, and that's what breaks her control. Not because she's evil or manipulative, but because this is how emotional dynamics have played out her entire life. And now, for the first time, she's met a man who doesn't dance to the rhythm of her moods. Most men confuse emotional stillness with coldness, but they're nothing alike. Coldness is rooted in pain, stillness is rooted in peace. Coldness says, I hate you for not choosing me. Stillness says, whether you choose me or not, I choose me. And that distinction is everything, because the first leads to drama, the second leads to freedom. And here's what's most important. Your indifference only works when it's authentic. If you're pretending not to care, she'll feel it. If you're being silent to make her chase, it will backfire. But if your silence comes from a full life, a life filled with purpose, values, and self-respect, it becomes irresistible, because now she's not drawn to your silence itself. She's drawn to the man behind it, the man who walks with direction, the man who doesn't beg, chase, or explain, the man who has nothing to prove but everything to offer. And when you carry yourself with that kind of indifference, the kind rooted in peace, not pain, the entire dynamic shifts. You're no longer seeking validation. You're no longer adjusting your identity to be more lovable. You've stopped asking, how can I keep her? And started asking, Does she even align with where I'm going? That's the moment you become truly powerful. Not because you've conquered her, but because you've conquered yourself. How women respond to your change when you change, she notices. Not later, immediately. The moment you shift your energy from pursuit to peace, from need to stillness, from chasing to choosing, something in the air around you becomes different. You may think it's subtle. You may think you're just becoming quieter, more grounded, more focused on yourself. But to her, the change is seismic, because everything she once depended on, your instant replies, your emotional availability, your willingness to always be there, starts to fade. And when a man who once gave her everything without resistance begins to pull inward to reclaim himself, it creates a disturbance in her world that she cannot ignore. At first, it may confuse her. She might test the waters to see if you're really different. She sends a message she once knew would get an immediate reply. And this time, there's silence. Or maybe a slower, shorter response. No extra exclamation points, no long explanations. Just calm, clear, steady energy. That small change alone sends a signal. You're no longer emotionally chasing. And that's when the internal alarms start going off for her. Not because she doesn't care about you, but because she no longer feels in control of the emotional rhythm between you. For some women, this brings panic. They become agitated, irritable, even angry. They may lash out, accuse you of being cold, distant, or changed. And they'd be right. You have changed. But not in a way that hurts them, in a way that protects you. You are no longer giving energy to behaviors that don't feed your peace. You're no longer playing the role of the always available emotional responder. And what she interprets as distance is actually self-respect. What she sees as indifference is simply your emotional independence returning to its rightful place. She may try to pull you back in, not with love, but with drama. Arguments that go nowhere, emotional bait, triggers she once used to spark a reaction in you. And when you don't take the bait, when you stay calm, centered, and unmoved, it breaks the pattern she relied on. Her power, once built on your predictable reactions, begins to unravel. You were the emotional mirror she used to see herself. And now that mirror doesn't reflect her mood anymore, it reflects your stillness. And for someone used to controlling emotional dynamics, that stillness can feel terrifying. But then something deeper begins to happen. In the quiet space between your old self and the man you're becoming, she starts to reflect. The guilt trips don't land. The games don't work. The attention-seeking tactics fall flat. And with no one reacting, she's left alone with her thoughts. And in that stillness, she begins to replay everything. Your past conversations. The warmth she once felt from you. The moments when you were endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly chasing. And now, she wonders why that energy is gone. She might start checking your social media more often, watching your stories, asking mutual friends about you. She may send you subtle messages, testing the waters again. Not because she misses the old dynamic, but because she's drawn to the man who walked away from the emotional chaos without explanation, without drama, and without losing his calm. She wants to understand you now, because you've become something new, someone harder to reach, but infinitely more compelling. Here's the part most men don't realize. It's not the distance that brings her back. It's the strength behind it. If your indifference is real, not cold, not resentful, not calculated, but rooted in genuine peace, then it triggers something primal in her. You become the mountain she can't move, the one man who doesn't orbit her mood swings. And for a woman who's used to emotional control, that kind of presence becomes unforgettable. Not because you've become someone else, but because you finally stopped being what she could control. And no, she won't come running back immediately. This isn't a movie. It takes time. It takes consistency. But what matters is this. When you stop playing the emotional puppet, when you reclaim your silence and your structure, you give her two choices. She can either rise to meet you, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, or she can remove herself entirely. And either option is a win, because both protect your peace. Both prove that your center is no longer available for rent. The deeper truth, once she sees you like this, a man grounded, unbothered, fulfilled with or without her, she never forgets you. Because you've become rare. And rarity, in a world full of emotional chaos, is the most magnetic force of all, building unbreakable masculine core. This level of power, the kind that no woman, no situation, no rejection can shake, comes from a decision that says, I will stop abandoning myself to be liked. I will stop breaking my own boundaries for affection. I will no longer negotiate my dignity for a temporary feeling of closeness. This is where your masculine core begins. And the man you've always wanted to become, calm, certain, grounded, unshakable, is not hiding somewhere in the future. He's buried under every compromise you've made out of fear. To rebuild him, you must go back into yourself. You must create space in your life that no woman can enter unless she earns it. Not because you're cold or closed off, but because your peace is now guarded. Your time is sacred. Your energy is no longer given freely to people who only want parts of you. When you start living like your attention is expensive, the entire world begins to treat it that way. And the first step is simple but brutal. You must stop living for her reaction. Stop shaping your identity around what makes her stay. Stop building emotional habits that only exist to keep her interested. Replace that with something real. Train your body not because it's trendy, because your discipline is the muscle that carries your identity. Wake up early, even when you don't feel like it. Get to the gym, even when you're tired. Put yourself under pressure on purpose, because pressure builds diamonds. And right now, the version of you that's always bending is soft. You need edges, not to hurt people, but to protect your core. And that core is built in silence, in sweat, in solitude. It's built in the moments when no one claps for you, no one checks on you, and no one is watching. That's where your value is reborn, not in her approval, but in your ability to move forward without it. Pick up books, learn new skills, teach your brain to hunger for growth instead of distraction. Most men lose themselves not because they aren't smart, but because their minds are undisciplined. They fill every silence with entertainment, every moment of solitude with stimulation. But a man who can sit still, completely alone, and still feel powerful, that man is dangerous. Because he's not addicted to noise, he doesn't chase attention. His validation comes from what he's building, not who is noticing. And this is where everything starts to shift. You begin to wake up with a sense of direction. Not to impress anyone, not to chase success, but because you've tasted what it's like to live with purpose. And once you feel that real, burning inner purpose, the chaos of emotional validation feels empty. The games she once played, they don't land. The drama she brings, it no longer shakes you. Because you have something she can't give you and she can't take away. Your self-built masculine identity. And that identity is magnetic. Not because you're trying to be attractive, but because you've become rare. You walk differently. You speak differently. You don't rush. You don't explain. You don't prove. You listen more. You react less. You smile less. Not because you're unfriendly, but because your peace no longer needs external confirmation. You've become emotionally efficient. And that terrifies people who once thrived on your emotional generosity. Women will feel this shift in you before you even speak. They'll sense that you're not just being distant. You've evolved. They'll notice that you no longer orbit their moods, because you've built a gravitational pull of your own. You've filled your world with so much depth, clarity, and direction that their presence is no longer your oxygen. It's just a breeze. Welcome, beautiful, but never required. That's when your silence becomes loud. Not because it's a tactic, but because it carries the energy of someone who doesn't chase. And that silence will echo in her mind louder than any confession of love. She'll think about you in quiet moments, not because you begged for her attention, but because she can no longer command your presence the way she used to. And now, finally, you are unforgettable. Not because of how hard you tried to win her, but because of how committed you became to never lose yourself again. If you've listened this far, it means something in this message resonated with you. Maybe you've been through heartbreak. Maybe you're still in it. Maybe you've given too much, and now you're empty. That ends today. You are not meant to be a beggar in love. You are not here to be pleasing, passive, or powerless. You are here to lead, not with domination, but with presence, with truth, with calm that cannot be shaken. She remembers the man who didn't flinch. She thinks about the one who stopped chasing, and she loses sleep over the one who stood in his worth and walked away in silence. Be that man. Support this channel if this message connected with you. Your support helps us continue creating videos that reach men who desperately need to hear this. Every like, comment, and share makes it possible for us to grow and to reach one more man who's about to give up on himself. If this changed you even a little, subscribe, join us, and comment unstoppable below so we know you made it to the end, and we know exactly who's ready to level up.